sucking oxygen possibly coming through the cylinders. So the closer it is to maybe, I guess it's like the airport next to those cylinders, maybe it's like sucking the air through, and the closer it is, it pulls more air to the flame. And then, you turn it off. Obviously, it's not pulling any more fire. I mean, that would kind of make sense to me a little bit, I guess, for the closest thing. Either that or it had to do with how the molecules heat up and cool down, possibly,
Okay,
something
all
like
right.
that.
You've got a couple of the words there are correct. You're talking about air, molecules heating up. Hotter the fuel, the better the combustion. Okay, yes. Where was the combustion taking place on this? Where was the combustion taking place on this video?
Oh, was it on that little egg-looking thing?
Yeah, inside the cylinders.
Yeah, the cylinders. Because it's like internal combustion or something like that.
Well, there's internal combustion, but combustion would when I say combustion, what do you think of?
An explosion.
Like an explosion, right? Something getting hot and expanding. What was getting hot there? Or what was hot? What was the heat source?
The heat source was those candles.
Right. So the candle, was that a wax candle, or what kind of candle was that?
It looked like those little candles, like some kind of fuel, like a liquid type of fuel that goes up through the wick.
Yeah. What kind of fuel do they use in those candles? Does anybody know?
Is it butane?
It's not butane, because butane would evaporate.
Is it kerosene?
Kerosene is a possibility. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or ether?
Ether, I believe, would also evaporate like butane. So I believe those candles were oil candles. So they're special oil for candles like that, oil type candles. In the 90s, they were kind of a big deal. Everybody had an oil candle in their room with like a fiberglass wick, and then you can get different color oils and different scented oils, and you can burn these candles in your room. It might still be a thing, but that is an oil candle. Kerosene, it's possible it was kerosene, but I do think that kerosene needs more heat than the wick of a candle to keep it lit. So, Dave, did you have something to add?
No, I don't. We probably can move forward.
Okay, cool. I saw you turned on your mic, so I was just checking. Good deal. So here's the deal. That engine's called a Stirling engine, and the Stirling engine is what we refer to as an external combustion engine, because the fuel or the combustion's happening outside of the engine itself. So if you look, the burn or the combustion's happening at the wick, which is outside of the engine. So the way a Stirling engine works is the heat from the candle increases the temperature of the air inside of this little chamber. And what happens is, as that air expands, it pushes on a piston, which pushes the piston upward in this design, right? And then as this piston goes up, this piston moves down, right? As this piston moves down, there's air being heated up here. And then as soon as this air is ready to expand to push this piston up, there's a linkage here which releases the pressure from this cylinder. So then this one's allowed to make movement, and then this one's allowed to move freely. And then they keep taking turns releasing pressure and then allowing the air to expand and push on the piston. That's called a Stirling engine. So I have, let's see here. Oh, I'm on the wrong page already. If there's any questions, you guys can stop me at any time here. So I have an image of what that looks like here. And one of these.
I think there's one at the top right.
Here it is. Yeah, you're right. I thought that was something else when I first saw it. Here it is here. So this is an example of a Stirling engine. So this is our piston. We have a crank pin that's 90 degrees apart. So this crank pin looks like this, except it's pointing away from us, okay? This is a flywheel. A flywheel is it's just a wheel that has some weight to it. And the reason it has weight to it is once that wheel is spinning, it carries momentum or kinetic energy that allows the crankshaft to continue to spin even when power is not being applied or when energy is not being applied. I hope that makes sense. So what happens here is as we heat up this chamber, the air expands and pushes this piston down. As it pushes this piston down, this piston will move and allow the cooling air to escape, okay? So what they do is they take turns creating motion with expanding air and cooling air. Here they're talking about enclosed fluid. So this isn't exactly the Stirling engine that we were looking at. The design's a little different, but the idea is the same. As we expand the air, one piston moves, the other one will move in a direction that complements the motion. And then as the air cools, it pushes on one piston. As it heats up and expands, it pushes on a different piston. So that is a Stirling engine. So this is one of the more simpler engine designs. What would be another example of an external combustion engine? Anybody?
Would like something like a train, like a coal train or something be similar?
Ah, look at that. Somebody's seen Back to the Future 3. All right. So let's share our screen. The type of engine you're talking about would be a steam engine.
Okay.
All right, let's see here. I'm trying to. There we go. Can you guys see my steam engine?
Yes.
Awesome. So the way a steam engine works is we have external combustion again, and you can burn coal, you can burn diesel fuel, you can burn wood, any type of fuel that's going to generate heat. And what we do with that fire or fuel is we heat up water. When we heat up that water, it's going to change from a liquid to a gas. Right? So that happens at what temperature? Who knows the temperature when water changes state from a liquid to a gas?
212.
It's about 200. It's about
degrees Celsius.
So in my class, we're going to talk in units of imperial units and Fahrenheit. And then if we need to do something in the metric system, we'll convert it. And the reason is it's so important to know both. I've worked for domestic as well as import manufacturers, and there's no saying what the manufacturer is going to ask you to use. So yes, the answer is 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's two different languages, right? It's like the difference between speaking Spanish and speaking English, and saying dog and perro, right? So
Okay.
and don't laugh at me for not being able to roll my R's, okay? I just can't. But you guys get the idea, right? It's two different languages. It's okay to use either. You just have to make sure that your audience is familiar with the language that you're using. I'm going to be biased towards the imperial system, but I'm going to encourage you to use both during the class. So in this format, I'm going to be using the imperial system. All right, bear with me one sec. I have a little notification here. Thank you, Haiti. I just saw that pop up there. So 212. So that water is going to change from a liquid to a gas. And now we have this boiler that's full of high pressure steam. And this high pressure steam is being held inside of the boiler with this throttle valve. So this throttle valve is just a plate that opens and closes and allows steam to either be in a captured state in the boiler, or it allows steam to escape from the boiler. We also have a relief valve. This relief valve will release the pressure in case the pressure exceeds the ability for the boiler to hold that pressure, right? So if the boiler will explode at 500 PSI, the relief valve will probably release pressure at 450 PSI before that boiler explodes. There's always a pressure gauge on a steam engine, so you can see where you're at. If you don't have very much pressure, your little train's not going anywhere, right? So the way this works is we open this throttle valve, we let steam into the vents and valves. So the first position here is steam's going to move down through this valve into this double acting piston, and it's going to push on the piston, and this connecting rod's going to transfer the energy from the piston through the connecting rod into the crankshaft, which is attached to the flywheel. As this rotates around, it's going to move this connecting rod, which is on this inlet and exhaust valve, and it's going to push this valve to close this original chamber. So when this valve is in the left position, this piston is going to be in the right position, and then the steam's going to enter from this side and then push the piston forward.
Back.
And it would be a continuous motion at the wheel. The wheel would continue to move around and around. Questions?
Where do the steam goes after? Is it in the system or does it go out somewhere?
Right here where it says spent steam vent, there's a little opening here. So when this valve moves from one side to the other, this is where the noise comes from. We hear that ch, 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 ch on the train. It's coming out of this exhaust vent, right? So as this valve moves this way, at one point, this edge of the valve is going to pass this vent, and whatever gas is here is going to escape.
Got
and
it.
then vice versa. Well, actually, it shows it here. It's not this edge. It's actually the middle of this valve is actually a smaller diameter. So as this piston is moving this way, it's pushing out any spent steam. And there's an opening here in the valve that allows the steam to escape through that vent. Okay. So the whole idea, the reason I show you these examples of the Stirling engine and the steam engine is because all engines have something in common, and that is they use heat and expansion to create motion. Any questions? Notice I will not call these, and they usually are, and I don't think I've seen one, but these will not be labeled as motors. What's the difference between a motor and an engine? Can anyone tell me?
Motors are powered by electrical devices, I guess.
Yes, exactly. A motor is an electrical component. A motor is what you're going to find on a Tesla, An engine is what you're going to find on a Challenger. A power unit is what you're going to find on a Prius, which is a combination of both. Now, the last two engines I've shown you, the steam engine and the Stirling engine, are both referred to as external combustion engines. I think we covered that already. So let's see here. Between Canvas and Zoom and CDX, they don't interface well with each other. So forgive me if things look a little clumsy. So the next engine here, let's see, there's a diagram here. In this diagram, it just kind of shows the pressure temperature correlation that I've been discussing. And the correlation is this. If you see, I'm sorry. If you see this plunger squeezing air, right? So visualize this as a piston. As we squeeze the air that's in this closed cylinder, the pressure increases, but as the pressure increases, the temperature also increases. So as we increase the pressure of a gas, the temperature increases as well. Is there anyone in the class familiar with turbocharged engines?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do we put in front of the radiator on a turbocharged engine to cool off the incoming air?
Intercooler.
Intercooler.
An intercooler, right? So that turbocharger compresses the air. It multiplies the air pressure beyond what our atmospheric air pressure is. In doing that, it raises the temperature of that air. So what happens to the molecules of air when they get hot?
They expand.
They expand, they get bigger, right? So when we have large molecules of air, we can't add as much fuel because the stoichiometric ratio is 14.7 to 1. So what the stoichiometric ratio is for an internal combustion engine, for gasoline, is 14.7 parts of air to 1 part of fuel. Well, if the air molecules are hot, you can't get as many of them in the same space as if they're cold. So if the air molecules are cold, we can include more fuel in that mixture and fit more fuel and more air in a smaller space and produce more power. So we use the intercooler to cool off the incoming air to produce additional power that would have been lost through temperature rise. Some of you may have an air compressor at home. The air compressor, when that thing's going all day and you put your hand on the tank, you'll notice that the tank of the air compressor also gets hot. So when the air in the tank is hot and we put an air tool or an air nozzle on the end of the hose and we push the nozzle, what happens to the air that's coming out of the tool or nozzle? Is it the same temperature as the air that's in the tank?
No.
Why not?
Because it's expanding and it's going to cool down because it's transferring heat.
So on the right side here, as the air pressure drops or the gas pressure drops, so does the temperature, right? So I like to talk about hairspray. If anybody's ever used hairspray or brake cleaner or spray paint, you'll know that an aerosol can will be room temperature, but when you spray it, the liquid that comes out is usually cold. You guys follow?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So the next thing here is we're going to talk about let's see here. That's the 4-stroke. I don't want to get into the 4-stroke cycle yet. I want to talk about some components here. me get the scale correct here. Okay, so this is a exploded view of a 4-cylinder overhead cam engine. So this is an internal combustion engine. On the internal combustion engine, the combustion or the explosion actually happens inside of a combustion chamber, and the flame actually makes contact with the piston itself. So what we're looking at here is the exploded view of the engine, including all of its components. So I'd like to start at the bottom. The bottom end of the engine is also referred to as the short block. This block, which would include the pistons, the connecting rods, and the crankshaft, as well as the main bearing caps, and usually the oil pump and rear main seal, is referred to as the short block. The cylinder head with the rocker arms, valves, camshaft is all referred to as the top end of the engine. So if somebody says, I just had the top end rebuilt, what they mean is they had the cylinder head rebuilt. Excuse me. When I bolt the cylinder head to the engine block and they're all assembled, and I have a cylinder head and engine block without the valve cover and without the oil pan, it's just the cylinder head and block, that is a long block, okay? And then if I wanted a complete engine, it would include the valve covers, oil pan, probably even the flywheel and the pulleys. That would be a complete engine. And then a turnkey engine would include all of the accessories like the power steering pump, the alternator, the air conditioning compressor, if it had that, the water pump, and all the other accessories that might be on that engine. So this exploded view is something that you'll need to get familiar with. This is going to be in, this is figure 1225. So in chapter 12, the 25th image is this one here. We're going to be using these words throughout the semester. So it's real important to familiarize yourself with this page. So as soon as you have the book, you'll be able to see this page. Any questions up to this point?
Could you repeat what the short block is consisting of?
Yeah, in fact, I was going to do this. I was going to use Google. Google is very handy. So I type in short block images, and this is what I get. It's a block with pistons, connecting rods, and a crankshaft.
And no oil pan, right?
No oil pan. That's it. That's a short block. Okay. When I type in long block, I got a engine block with cylinder heads, no covers. See that? That's a long block. Cylinder head, engine block. Okay. When I type in complete engine, typically a complete engine is like this guy here. It's got valve covers. This one has a carburetor and a water pump, pulleys, right? So this is complete. This engine is almost ready to drop in. Here's an LS platform, block, cylinder heads, valve covers, ignition coils, intake, fuel system. This is probably fuel injection on this one. Oil pan, oil pump, oil filter, crank pulley, front cover, and it probably has a flywheel or flex plate on the back, depending on how you order it, okay? So those are called complete engines. And then there is the turnkey engine. The turnkey engine is like this one here. This engine, let me see if I could. This engine includes the alternator, the power steering pump, the water pump, and that looks like an air conditioning compressor. Okay, so that engine includes all of the accessories. So the difference between a turnkey engine and a complete engine is that a turnkey engine includes the accessories. So if I was building a, my family, you know, we in the past, we would build dune buggies or race cars. We would purchase a turnkey engine for our customer and install that. And that engine would have the alternator, power steering pump, air conditioning pump, and any other accessories that we ordered on that turnkey engine. This way, instead of ordering 15 different components, I'm only ordering that engine with those accessories. And then I kind of build the car around that engine. Okay, so the four terms are short block, long block, or there's five terms, excuse me, short block, long block, complete engine, oh, and turnkey, I guess it's four. Did I mess that up?
Sounds right.
Okay. So here's another one that you might hear when you're out there. You might hear top end. Oh, I saw top end engine. So when I say top end of the engine, pretty much that's intake, cylinder heads. Okay, cylinder heads, intake. Pages of that. Cylinder heads, intake. Cylinder heads, intake. So when somebody says they rebuilt the top end, essentially that means they took the heads off, they had the heads rebuilt, and they reassembled the engine. All right, where are we at? Any questions so far?
Nope, good to go.
Good deal. All right, so let me stop sharing again. So we have different style engines. Your engine is going to be few different types of configurations. Let me make sure I have all of the configurations available to me. All right, so let me share one of these. We're going to start with the most traditional engines, and then we're going to get into the more complex engines. So this first design here is called an inline engine. So anybody want to guess why they call this an inline engine? Maybe you don't even have to guess. You might already know.
All the cylinders are aligned.
It's
Yeah.
a line.
Yeah, all those cylinders line up perfectly, right? They're in a straight line. On this engine, this would be cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's your inline engine. This is the traditional engine you're finding in most passenger cars. Most of your Hondas and economy cars have 4-cylinder engines. Your Honda, I almost said Honda Camry. Your Honda Accords, your Honda Civics, your Toyota Camrys and Corollas, your Ford. What's the little Ford?
Fiesta.
the little Ford Fiesta, and then even the rally one, the Focus, the Ford Focus, right? These all use inline 4-cylinder engines. So this is the pretty traditional engine that most cars are using. Even my dad's Kia has a 4-cylinder engine. They get great fuel economy. They're usually pretty quiet. They make enough power to get you from point A to point B. If you put a turbo on one, it can make a lot more power. I used to have, well, when I was in high school, my mom had a Dodge Daytona with a 2.5 inline 2.5 liter engine with a turbo, and we put a computer chip on it, and it was boosting about 15 psi. And I could beat 5-liter Mustangs with that car. It was pretty impressive. But after a few cracked cylinder heads, we got rid of it because the turbo would boost so much, the combustion chamber couldn't take the pressure and heat. And eventually it started getting hard finding cylinder heads to replace with. So, all right, so that's your 4-cylinder engine. This is this is our V configuration. This is our V configuration. So in this configuration here, this is your traditional V6 and V8. The reason they call it a V is because you have bank 1 and bank 2, and the banks are usually they're around 90 degrees apart, and the pistons reciprocate up and down in a V motion. So this would be usually you have an odd bank and an even bank. So if this was the front of the engine, I would see cylinder 1, 3, 5, 7, and on this side I'd have cylinders 2, 4, 6, 8. And the way we can tell that this is 1 and this is 2 is we look at where the connecting rod is on the crankshaft. If this is the front of the engine, this is cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back here is 5, 6, and then we have 7 and 8. And that's how we identify the position of the cylinder. So most, most gasoline-powered trucks are V8s. Many higher end or premium model passenger cars and minivans will have a V6 engine. I even read an article about Chrysler putting a Hellcat V8 in a minivan. Did anybody read that?
No.
Yeah,
You said in a minivan.
I saw a meme about it. They said, here's Ford and Chevy over here making everything electric. And Chrysler's like, what the hell? We're going to put a Hellcat engine in a minivan. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, I think they did it just as a promotional piece. But that's your typical V-style engine. The thing with the V-style engines is they produce a lot of power. They usually sound really good. But the problem is, given today's current climate, let's see, I want to try to say it without being controversial either way. Climate awareness. Everybody wants to make sure they're doing their part. In the V8 engine, they're doing a good job keeping it economical and lowering the carbon footprint from V8 engines. But eventually, I think a V8 engine is going to be a thing of the past. You guys know in 2035 in the state of California, you'll no longer be able to sell an internal combustion engine on the line, at the dealership level. So, so the V engine, it's an oldie but a goodie. It's still here. My wife's 2018 Nissan has a V8 engine, and my 1986 Dodge Ram Charger has a V8 engine. Here's the difference. In 1986, the V8 engine produced 160 horsepower. The camshaft was in the block and it used a carburetor. When I start that engine, it smells, it's loud, it runs a little rough, but it gets the job done. And I get maybe 8 miles to the gallon on a good day. My wife's 2018 Nissan Armada is 400 horsepower. It's got dual overhead variable camshafts. It has direct injection. And on a good day, just cruising long distance, we can get over 20 miles to the gallon. Towing my trailer, I get about 13 miles to the gallon, towing a big travel trailer. So the technology has definitely changed and gotten better. And maybe someday the battery technology will be to a point where I can travel the same distance in the same amount of time on one battery charge, and I would buy one if it was affordable. But that's the only thing holding up the electric car market. But here we are with the V8. This even the fastest V8s cannot compete against like a Tesla with the dual motor setup. You know, the electric cars, I've always been resistant to it, but I know it's a reality and it's coming. But they do, performance-wise, the electric car is better. So, all right. Any questions on the V8? Okay, guys, so I'm going to share the next design here. This design is called the horizontally opposed engine, or the flat engine, also referred to in some markets as a Boxster engine. So this is the design that Porsche has used in their like 911 models from the beginning of time. This is the design that air-cooled Volkswagens have used since the beginning of time. And this is the design that Subaru still uses today. So this is the horizontally opposed or flat engine. It's the pistons reciprocate side to side. The reason they call it a Boxster is because the pistons move side to side like a boxer throwing punches. So this is your flat engine. Unless you're working for Subaru in the modern era, you're probably not going to be working on a flat style engine. If you are into old classic cars, I have a couple of older air-cooled Volkswagens personally, and they're a lot of fun to work on. So this is the design they have, and I'm lucky to have been able to work on one. You know, you guys might have the chance to. So any questions on the horizontally opposed engine?
Nope.
All right, all right. So the next engine here, this is a Volkswagen design. So this is the VR design. So what they do here is this package is about the size of an inline four. But what you can see is that they've taken the cylinders and they've staggered them in a way where they can kind of squeeze them into a smaller space. So the pistons, so the cylinders are kind of offset, but they also overlap. See how they overlap here?
Yes.
So now I can have the same power as a V6 in the same size package as an inline four. So what they do is they have this complex crankshaft system that allows the piston to move in this V configuration. So it's like a V. The cylinders are shaped like a V engine. So it's really complex. And so the pistons, even though it doesn't look like it in this picture doesn't do justice. If we're able to rotate it, you would be able to see the V configuration in this design. So if a 6-cylinder engine in a small package isn't enough for you, you can.
I have a question real quick about the VR engine.
Hold
Do
on,
they-
we're still on it. Let me just show you. You can go to the W engine, right? So this is like stacking two 6-cylinders next to each other, and now you have a V12 engine. So in the early 2000s, Volkswagen had a car called the Phaeton that had this W12. I think the Bugatti uses a W12, and I know there's a couple of other high-end cars. I think Porsche might have a W12 model as well. What was your question?
So with the VR6, is that what you call it? The previous example, it
Yes.
fits 6 cylinders in this using the space of a 4-cylinder. So do any companies make a 8-cylinder model, which would be similar to a 6-cylinder, a straight
Not,
6?
not that I know of, but anything is possible. Anything is possible. So I'm not 100% sure of that. What I do know is if somebody built this, right? So if you have a machinist who's willing to build custom engines, they can build anything, right? So this is a VR, so this would be a W12. So the reason they call it a W is because it's like a V engine, but it's two V's next to each other. I have a V here and a V there, kind of like the shape of a W, right? Looks like that from the side almost. So that is the engine that is in that famous Bugatti. When you pull the cylinder head off of one of these, it looks pretty interesting. Let me kind of regroup here, get my windows under control. I have a lot of open windows. Did I answer all your questions so far? This is in real life what a W engine looks like. That's a W engine. So you can see how those pistons overlap. There's no way this cylinder would fit in between these two unless they were offset. And you could see the number of bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 bolts to hold that cylinder head on. You're going to be torquing bolts for a long time.
It seems like a pretty heavy engine.
Well, it seems heavy, but it's all aluminum. And it's a small package because I think the liters, I think it's a pretty small package as far as liters goes. I think it's only 5 or 6 liters. So it's still smaller than like what your Challenger would be. Because I think the Challengers are 6.2 liters. And there's more moving parts. It's more complex. But I can imagine if things were made of older materials like steel and cast iron, it would definitely be very heavy. But I think with newer materials, they're using some titanium, aluminum, magnesium, and other materials to keep the weight down on a lot of these vehicles. So, all right. Any questions about the W engine? I like to show this because it's such an interesting design. All right, so let me, before I start talking about the 4-stroke cycle, there was another engine I wanted to share with you, and this is called the Wankel engine.
Oh, snap.
All right, and then yes. All right. Rotary time. So if you've ever heard about a rotary engine, a rotary engine, a true rotary engine is actually an airplane engine that has like the big fins. And I can share that with you after. But yes, the RX-7 and RX-8 use what they call a Wankel engine. So I'll spell that for you. In the chat, it's W-A-N-K-E-L. That's Wankel engine. So let me show you some pictures here. The Wankel engine is very exciting because it doesn't take up very much space. So you can see in this image here, you can't even really see the engine. There's an alternator. This is a small engine bay. There's a strut tower there and a strut tower about right here. This is the intake. This is all intake manifold. This is your secondary air system. This looks like intake or secondary air. This is your oil filler. That looks like a dipstick. And then there's just a couple of vacuum hoses and stuff. So way down here is this little tiny package called a Wankel engine. So what the Wankel engine is, I want to share these pictures in order here. The Wankel engine is an engine that uses a rotor to create motion. And as this rotor spins around and around, it produces motion at a center shaft, which would be like the crankshaft of the engine. So there's an internal rotor gear that's connected to a crankshaft. So this rotor rotates around and it compresses the fuel. These are spark plugs that ignite the fuel. And when that ignites, it pushes this rotor around. And then when this apex gets to the center of the bore here, it pushes the exhaust out, and then fresh air comes back in here and the process starts over. So this rotor goes around and around. The advantages of this engine are there's very few moving parts. And because the engine spins around and around, there are no reciprocating components. So none of the components in this engine change direction, which means you can spin this engine at 20,000 RPMs and it won't fall apart. Let me find you the next image here. This is what it looks like in real life. Okay, so there's that rotor that goes around and around. This is the crankshaft, and then this is your apex, they call it. And these are apex seals. Gas money gone. I guess they are kind of gas guzzlers. The reason they're not mainstream in the state of California is because they are they're kind of dirty engines. They produce a lot of smog. Let's see here. Oh. This is the housing of the rotary engine. You can see this is a nice clean machined finish. So that's a rotary engine housing. So usually there's 2 or 3 housings with 2 or 3 rotors, depending on how the engine is made. Okay, and these engines are complex to rebuild from what I understand. A lot of people won't even touch them. All right. So I have a couple more images, and then we're going to move on to the 4-stroke cycle, and then we're going to call it a night. So the next image here is the rotary engine crankshaft. Looks like this. So this is a crankshaft for 2 rotors. So you can see they're 180 degrees apart, and that's the shaft that spins. You can see how short that crankshaft is. It's about half the length of a 4-cylinder engine. It's a very small package. So that's the crankshaft. And then this is an image of the rotor. And these are the seals that somebody was talking about in the chat there. Don't break those seals. These are the rotary engine seals. And when those seals fail, the engine's not, it's like the same thing as a piston ring going bad. The engine will no longer be able to compress air and fuel. And then I think I have one more image to share here. Yeah, last one. This is a diagram of how the process works. So I'll leave that up for a minute so you guys can kind of take a look at it and get an idea of how the process works. I'm starting to lose my voice. Forgive me for drinking water while I'm talking here. So on step one, there's the intake stroke. So you can see that apex seal is right at the edge of the intake port. And it's going to take a gulp of air into this combustion chamber. And then as that apex seal comes around, it's going to squeeze that air fuel mixture into a smaller space. That's your compression part of the cycle. And then we're going to get close to the combustion chamber. Once those apex seals are about evenly split, depending on the timing of the engine, we're going to ignite it with these spark plugs, and that air fuel mixture is going to begin to burn. Once it starts to burn, because that's moving in the clockwise position already, it's going to push that rotor around and create the rotating motion. And then when that apex seal reaches the exhaust port, it'll allow this exhaust to start moving out of the exhaust port. As this apex seal pushes the rest of the exhaust out, this apex seal is drawing in the next gulp of air. This apex seal is creating the compression process for the cycle. Questions?
I have a question. How does it transmit power to the crankshaft? It looks like it's spinning like around the crankshaft and there's no connection.
We'll see these teeth right here are gears, right? So if that crankshaft is is stationary, the crankshaft looks like it's stationary, but as this spins around, it's actually spinning that crankshaft as well. So this rotor actually spins faster than the crankshaft.
Got it.
Yeah, it's kind of a funky design. Let me see if I can find, that's a great question. Let me see if I can find a a quick image for you, or a quick video that shows that motion. Let's see, I'll spend 30 seconds looking. Sorry about that. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to turn off the audio on this one because they're actually running the engine, but they're supposed to be showing it in slow motion. So I might have to just kind of zoom until we get the slow motion. So let's see here. So this is a Wankel engine. This guy's all pumped up because he's going to show it to you in slow motion, bro. He's going to talk to you about it for 5 minutes, and then these are like the 30 seconds we want right here.
Pulls the air fuel mixture in through the carburetor, compresses it, it gets ignited. Then we have the power stroke, which pushes that rotor, and then the exhaust stroke, which is kind of combined with the power stroke. We can see there's only a couple of moving components inside this engine.
All right, were you able to see the motion there?
Yes.
All right, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the exhaust stroke.
So you could see as the crankshaft spins, it's like on this on that lobe is like an eccentric, and much different than this setup here. So, all right. So that guy's trying to teach you guys that. He should take my class. All right. Anyways, I'm just being funny, guys. He's probably pretty smart. Okay. So the last thing I want to cover tonight before I excuse you to go finish your safety requirements and COVID requirements, for those of you that have not done that yet. Let's see here. I was going to share with you the 4-stroke cycle. So I have some images here about that somewhere. Oh, you know what? I actually have the video pre-selected on YouTube to show you that I forgot about. Let's see if it's still in my library. Library. That's my YouTube premium account. It's not what I want. Here it is. Auto 56. No. Sorry guys, I'm Mr. Clumsy over here. I think it's time for me to call it a night, but we're not there yet. Here it is. High-speed twin-cylinder Stirling engine. No, I don't have it in here. I thought I did. Okay, enough of that. All right, I'll play this video. We're going to give this person a chance to get a viewpoint. And I'll just play this with you guys, for you guys. And then I'm going to leave it on mute, though, and I'll do the commentary myself. If there's any questions, again, just throw it in the chat, interrupt me. It's all good. Here we go. This is the 4-stroke cycle. So what you're looking at here is an engine that has a single piston moving, reciprocating up and down. That crankshaft rotates. It looks like they're going to point out the components here. So your piston, connecting rod, and crankshaft. That's your bottom end. Okay, and then over here on this side, this is going to be your fuel injector, your intake valve, and your exhaust valve. This is your spark plug in the middle. So the distance from the top of the piston to the bottom of the piston is called a stroke. In the position when the piston's at the top, we call that TDC, or top dead center. When the piston is at the bottom of its stroke, we call that BDC, bottom dead center. Okay, so let's see where they're going here. They got fuel delivery system. So this is the first stroke. Piston moves down. You'll notice on the first stroke, the intake valve was open. The fuel injector sprayed fuel into the intake port. As that valve was open, the piston was moving from top dead center to bottom dead center. As it moves from top dead center to bottom dead center, it looks like it's drawing the air fuel mixture into the combustion chamber. But I want you to remember this. What's happening as that piston moves down is it's creating a void in the combustion chamber. And what is happening is atmospheric pressure is pushing the air fuel mixture into the cylinder. Okay, I want you to think about it like that, because if you're going to be somebody who's building engines, and especially if you want to build performance engines, you need to recognize that this outside air is pushing air into the cylinder to fill a void. So the faster you can get the air from the outside to the inside, the more power your engine's going to make. Okay, so from bottom dead center to top dead center with the intake valve open, fresh air and fuel come into the combustion chamber. That's your intake stroke. Now the valves are both closed. What's the piston going to do?
Compress.
The piston's going to start to reciprocate upwards, and it's going to squeeze that air fuel mixture into the combustion chamber. That's called the compression stroke. The compression stroke is where we squeeze the air fuel mixture and a couple of things happen. Not only are we squeezing the air and fuel together, as we squeeze it together, the temperature of that air fuel mixture increases rapidly. So as the temperature of that air and fuel mixture is increasing rapidly, it's only going to require a very small spark to ignite that air fuel mixture and begin to burn. So you'll see here, the spark plug just requires a little tiny spark, and then boom, now we have an explosion. That explosion forces the piston from top dead center to bottom dead center. That's called the power stroke. That's the stroke where the power gets transmitted from the explosion into the piston, through the connecting rod into the crankshaft, and then from the crankshaft to whatever it is you're powering up, a lawnmower, a remote control car, a remote control airplane, a generator, an automobile, a truck, a mini bike, a go-kart, you name your toy. All right, here we go. So now that was the combustion stroke, also known as the power stroke. Stroke 4 is the exhaust stroke. Our exhaust valve opens. We push out the spent air and fuel mixture, and we release that into the atmosphere. Now, perfect combustion with a stoichiometric ratio of 14.7 to 1 will produce a byproduct of CO2 and H2O. So many of your new cars are classified as PZEV vehicles, which means partial zero emissions vehicles, which means most of the time they're running and the only thing coming out of the tailpipe is CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and H2O, which is water. Both of those are naturally occurring elements. Now, the volume of CO2 in our atmosphere is one of the arguments about why we need to get rid of internal combustion engines. So if that's the case, that's what it will be. But if we have an engine that's tuned properly, the byproduct should be CO2 and H2O. So here's the process all over again without any pauses. Note those valves opening and closing.
Mm-hmm. Camshaft.
Intake, compression, power, exhaust. Intake, compression, power, exhaust. So it looks like on the right there, they're talking about how fast the rotations happen. So essentially what you need to do is, if you divide your RPM by seconds, so 5,000 RPM divided by 60 would tell you how many times that rotation happens per minute or per second. All right, so that is the 4-stroke cycle. You guys also will have access to this diagram, which is not as exciting as a video, but it is as informational. Where are we at? And guys, I didn't take the time to show you all of the images available because there's just not time. But I encourage you to use all of the resources available to you when you purchase the CDX book. There are very many of them. Okay, so this is the diagram of the strokes. That might help you remember it. So if you want to, I don't know if you can take a screenshot or snap a photo if you think you need help remembering. But here's your crankshaft in blue. Your connecting rod is like in this yellowish color. And in your piston on this intake stroke, it's showing the piston moving down. The intake port is on the opposite side of our video. This is a CI or compression ignition engine. So that would be a diesel engine. So this is a little different than a gas engine, but the concept's the same. The only difference is the fresh air comes in and then the fuel is injected into the cylinder instead of creating a spark. So that would be like your diesel engine does not have spark plugs. It just uses the compression, the heat from the compression to ignite the air fuel mixture. But the process is the same. You have intake, compression, power, exhaust. And then there is another diagram for the gas engine. There it is. There it isn't. Sorry guys, I'm getting clumsy here. Here it is. All right, I kept clicking the wrong one because I thought I was looking at the wrong one. Okay, so this is the gasoline engine or SI engine, which is spark ignition engine. So if you see SI, that means spark ignition. So this one, again, the concept is the same. Spark occurs, combustion starts. Oh, this isn't even a 4-stroke cycle. This is just showing you the combustion process. So that's the spark ignition engine. Where is it? Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I will share it with you next time when I find the right one. I have a whole screen of images and they're starting to all blend together when I look at them. So. Oh, here it is. It was in a different spot. See, right when I give up. There it is. You can screenshot that one. Intake, compression, power, exhaust for the spark ignition engine. So you can screenshot that or snap a photo if you need help remembering. And again, this is image 18 in chapter 12. When you get your book, you'll be able to look at these more closely in detail. The book is 100% online, guys. They don't hand out the big fat book anymore. The reason we went online is the cost is at least $150 less for students because the book for 8 classes was pretty thick. It was quite the expensive book. So, all right. So here we are. I went a little longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to see, is anybody still awake?
Yes.
Ha, one person.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Sam fell
No.
asleep, he says. Right on, guys. Hey, awesome. Thanks for sticking in there. Appreciate it. Any last minute questions before I call it a night?
When
I
do we need
wanted
the
to-
book by?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When do we need the book by?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday.
As soon as you can possibly get it. So I encourage you to go tonight, buy the book, and hopefully have it by next week, because next week I'll be assigning work from chapter 12.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're welcome. So
Teacher, next class will be on Zoom.
so that is depending on how many students finish the safety requirements. So as soon as I have half the class who have completed the as soon as all of the students have completed the safety requirements, I can assign a group A and a group B for Mondays to meet on Mondays and to meet on Wednesdays. And then once those groups are assigned, I will send instructions over the email on what day you should be arriving. And I will also be sending instructions for your online lesson if you're not going to be on campus that day, because if you're not on campus, you're still going to have an online lesson. I will probably be pre-recording lessons for those days. And then on top of that, you guys are going to need to just keep up on Canvas, because the assignments are going to be popping up on Canvas. You'll need to be taking quizzes, pre-tests, and final exams for each chapter. This week, we have our COVID module is priority 1. The next thing is the SP2 safety tests. And the next thing is the ASE1 pre-test. I will show you guys what that looks like. So just to clear up any confusion here. Okay, so currently on Canvas, Day, I'll answer your question in a minute, buddy. Currently on Canvas, I have the Zoom link as the first thing, student opportunities. These will always be at the top, these 2 items, okay? Please take advantage of these scholarships. I put these here. They will expire and they will disappear when they're no longer available. Priority 1 right now, if you have access to Canvas, get this COVID stuff done. These are all of the attachments you're supposed to be reviewing. And then there are some quizzes. The little rocket ships are quizzes. And then this little document here means that's an assignment. You need to click on that, follow the instructions, fill out the form, and submit it to me. And then there's a few videos you need to preview or watch. And then there's a couple more assignments you need to get turned in. Once you're done with the COVID assignment, you need to come down here and complete the safety requirements for SP2. If you have not been able to log into SP2, you need to stay on the line tonight and I'll get you connected, because that safety requirement is also mandatory. We won't be allowed to work in the lab unless every single student has submitted that. And then at the end here, I have a COVID shop access video. This is the way we enter the shop this semester for our COVID requirements. And then the next thing here is the ASE1 course pretest. I have this due for February 8th. So please do that pretest before class on Monday as you can. And there's a good chance that we're going to be in the same format next week. And then the week after, I'll start getting you guys in the lab. This is going to make, the reason for that is because I want to make sure I'm getting you guys the instructions for when you get to the lab, you have an idea of what we're working on. So, all right. Shata, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so there's a question about ad codes. So where I'm at is I just need to do attendance tonight, and that will determine how many spots I have open for those students that are looking to add my class who have been present on Monday and today and stuck through it. And they're on the wait list. I have to go through wait list priority. They will be getting ad codes as spaces open up. So you check your emails, and like I said, tonight when I'm done doing my paperwork for this class tonight, you guys will get an email if I'm giving you an ad code. If you haven't heard from me yet, I encourage you to plug in next week as well, because usually, you know, people realize, hey, I can't do this class this semester, or you know what, this class isn't what I thought it was going to be. So we just got to kind of be patient when it comes to the ad codes. Any other questions on that? Right. So Day, I just sent you a private message there, buddy, so you can respond to that or just hang tight. The next assignment here is the COVID-19 assignments. Some of those forms you're supposed to sign them. We are not supposed to be exchanging papers at the school, so I won't be collecting any paper documents from you. That is another COVID requirement, that we don't collect any papers. So what you'll need to do is print those and sign them, and then submit a PDF or image of that document. The other option would be if your device, computer, cell phone, tablet, has a feature where you can sign it electronically and then upload the PDF of that, that would also be acceptable. Any questions on the COVID student agreements or other documents in that lesson?
I have a question about one of the homework assignment, the correct usage of chemicals, but I could ask after class.
You can ask now because other people might have the same question. This is kind of new to all of us, so.
Yeah, okay, so it's the one where we have to read Toyota COVID-19 service and reception delivery process
Yeah,
and fill out all the questions, but I don't know. The Toyota COVID-19 service document was pretty short. It was pretty brief. I feel like it was not enough for us to answer all the questions on that document, because for the document we have to provide the materials and composition materials and the appropriate cleaners. Are those that we have to guess?
no, you're not guessing. So those documents, a few of those documents will cover the recommended cleaning materials or chemicals for disinfecting the the door handles, radio knobs, and so on and so forth. So you need to look at those attachments closely because all the information is definitely in there. And I will, when you turn it in, I kind of scan and review those documents to make sure that you're not trying to BS me. So the information's definitely there. If you're having trouble finding it, hang out on the line here and we'll kind of look at it together and see if I can help you out.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So I have two other questions. I'll go over those here, or one other question after that one. Does the ASC course pretest affect your grade? None of the pretests are going to affect your grade. The pretests are purely there for you and I to kind of measure how much we've learned as we get through each section. So this ASC 1 pretest is 61 questions long. We won't know how well you did in this class until you take the final. The final is going to be pretty much the same as that pretest, at least the written final, where it's going to be a multi-choice test, a multiple choice test, and you'll be able to compare your 20% now with your 80% later and be like, oh yeah, I actually learned something. So, okay. Anybody else have questions? All right, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and call the names of the people that I had present on this call. If you are still here, if you are still present, let's see here. I'm sorry, there's a lot happening on my screen with people messaging me and stuff. So I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So let's see, I have on my call, I have 20 people. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, I had a couple people checked out with me. I'm going to go ahead and call the names of the people that I have as present. If you hear your name, you're excused. Thank you all for hanging in there. Some of these classes go really long, but I want to make sure I'm giving you all the information I can before we get too deep into this class. So if you hear your name, you're excused. You're welcome to stay on if there's any one-on-one questions or anything like that. So I have Cordell,
Here.
Cordell, you still on the line?
Still here.
All right. Thanks for being here tonight. Julian.
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. Teddy, is Teddy still here?
You're here. Hi,
Awesome.
yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Teddy. Gabriel.
I'm here.
Let's see. Elias de la.
Here.
Thank you, Elias. De La Paz. Okay. I just put DLP because I was trying to write fast and I forgot what the P was. Thank you. Haiti.
I'm
Haiti.
here.
Thank you, Haiti. Tuan Tran.
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. Zachary Gibbs.
I'm here.
Perfect. Jacob Boyme.
I'm here.
Sam Shu.
Yeah, here.
Shata is here. I just got done talking with him. Justin.
Here.
Very good. Victor Lopez.
Here.
All right. And then Day is here. Day, did you get my message?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, I did.
Excellent. Excellent. Warren. Warren's still here. All right. Karar Al Ashur.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And then Juan.
Right here.
Juan, can you do me a favor? Can you send
Yeah.
me a private message with your last name so I don't mess it up on the attendance?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Elijah V.
Here. Here.
Excellent. And then Liam.
Here.
Perfect. Okay, last thing. Is there anybody that I missed? Thank you, Juan. Okay, so you are all excused. Have a great night. If you have anything for me one-on-one, please stay on the line and I'll be sure to address your questions. If you're all here for a one-on-one thing, maybe start shooting me some private messages and I will answer them as best I can.
All right.